class.
Yeah.
That actually that sounds like something I would love and would do. Where that sounded like a man after my own heart. I was just like, holy crap! I could start every class off with the Nichols theme song in the background, like Nichols time, we're gonna learn some English stuff. Sounds totally like something I would do. And I play the video to start every class. I'm like, let's go, guys. But that would take 30 seconds to a minute of every one of my classes. I don't know if I have that to spare. Well,
Gives you an hour and 14 minutes.
we'll start this. This is what we'll do. We'll start doing this, and I'll be thinking about that the whole time. But let's talk about where I'm at in the grading process first. So I'm going to say this, and it's not going to sound right to a couple of you maybe, but I don't remember exactly which ones. I'm completely done with grading English 1301 papers. I've completely finished them. They're all graded. Now I think I mentioned this, I'm pretty sure, that if your paper did not show up in the viewer, like the day I was showing you how to do that, submit the paper, if it doesn't show up in the viewer where I can see it, which essentially means if you submit it and you don't see it in the viewer when you look at it, like you go and you click the assignment 1, that's essay 1, and what you see is not your paper shown in a PDF viewer over here, but a download button, then that's what I see. And I said that I would leave those all the way till the very end. And I didn't mean, I may have spoken incorrectly, but I did not mean leave those till the very end of the English 1301 papers. I meant leave those to the very end of all the papers. Because it's much easier for me to grade all the ones that I have to download. Because there's a button I can click that'll let me download all remaining papers. And it downloads them all at once. Then I can just open them one at a time. Rather than have to individually download and find a place to save every single one of those papers. That's much more work for me. So what I do is just grade all the ones I can see in the viewer. Then I go back and I will grade all the ones that have the button because I download it once and do it that way. If it was a case where any of y'all had an essay that was written in some format that I know that I can't read and the Blackboard can't read, like if you wrote in Google Docs format and you submitted a Google Docs file format, which I can't actually open, then I tried to send you a comment that also had a YouTube video link that would show you how to export to PDF, and then you would know how to submit that file instead of the one that you did. Same, I think, with somebody who used Microsoft Works, which I've not seen in a few years, but I'm pretty sure that's what WPS is. Microsoft Works Word Processing System is what the WPS file format stands for. But I think I even found one on YouTube to show how to convert from that to a PDF. But I didn't look at the videos. I just assumed that they were correct. And if it didn't work for you, go ahead and look at YouTube and see. So I am done with all the 1301 essays, but there are still a couple that have a button instead of showing in the viewer that I will get to, but not until after I've done all the essays for all the classes, then I'll come back. In terms of the grading on the 1301s and what I've seen, I did a quick summary of the day of what I had seen so far, and it ended up mostly being true for everybody. So for the most part, what people aren't doing is, if they got something less than an A, generally speaking, it was because they didn't show the evidence of how they changed. They just told that they changed. Like, I live life to the fullest, or I appreciate my family now. In what way? Show me in what way you've appreciated your family since. What do you do now? What is different than it was before? Yes?
Okay, you gave me less than a 100, but close to a 100, and I was wondering why I didn't get a 100, because all your comments was good, and I followed exactly what you said.
This is a good part. This is a good point, and I'm actually going to do an entire discussion on this, which I did yesterday. If you can see, I'm looking at these other lines that are on the board. It's not quite right. Okay, so this is what I determined. This is the grade column. This is the difficulty column. So here's like normal numbers like 50%, 25%, but it's really not accurate to that. In fact, I'm going to erase that. In fact, what I'm going to do is make the difficulty look like this. Does anybody know what a bell curve is and how it works? Okay, so a bell curve essentially means that very few people receive this, most people receive this, and very few people receive this. So this is like me putting this in terms of the likelihood that you'll get the grades that you see. So very few people get between a 0 and a 50, you can see, not very many. You have to do something really, really bad to get below a 50. Usually that's wildly off topic, or maybe I can tell that you somewhat plagiarized, I just can't prove it, or something's off with that paper. Maybe you did like a paragraph and just turned in a paragraph, and I was like, but mostly I'll just say, you just wrote a paragraph, finish it, and I'll grade it. And that's what I'll give. Something I'll give a 0 to that, and then just when they turn it in, I'll really grade it. Everything above a 50 is normal increments, I think, from, and like in terms of like what people are likely to receive, like 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 to 80, you can see are about equal. It's very likely that somebody could get some of those grades. In fact, the vast majority of things you'll see are likely that people will get will be grades between 50 and 90. And really, I think this 50 to 60 link is short too. It's a smaller piece. So this is not entirely accurate, because I think it is less likely you'll get between a 50 and a 62. It can happen. I don't think I gave any between 50 and 60 actually this time, so that's why I'm kind of worried about that. I gave a couple of 60 to 70 papers, but not very many. But for the most part, though, on this assignment, most people got between 70 and a 95. And in fact, the vast majority of people got between 70 and 85. And if I had to go really accurate, most people got between an 80 and an 85. So that would say that's, if you look, it's kind of like the middle of the bell curve right here, is this little area. So this is in terms of like what grades what people are most likely to get. So a 95, if you look at this, is actually 60% difficulty, I guess, on the difficulty scale. So the difficulty of getting grades, to me, like imagine like a normal teacher. You were like in a class that has essays and the teacher gives you 100 on an essay, right? Yeah, a teacher's a liar. That teacher is a liar, whether they admit it to themselves or not. Because 100 means perfect. Perfection, I would assume, is something like Hemingway, Faulkner. Because we're in a subjective class, what's 2 plus 2? 4. That's a perfect answer, because there's no way you could be wrong. If you give me a 3, that's wrong, that's a 0 on that particular answer. If you give me a 4, that's right, that's a 100 on that answer. It's a very objective reality in terms of math. If you give me the right term, that's right. If you give me the wrong term, that's wrong. And that's black and white, very easy to figure out. English is a little different because it's a human thing where a human's reading. So I feel uncomfortable giving a 100 to something because that's essentially me saying that it's perfect. If some other teacher comes back and grades the paper and goes, this isn't perfect, then I go, it's okay. I don't know. Like, I feel like I wouldn't be protected in that instance. Like I would feel like I'd done something wrong. And I had it was a book that I read one time on like ethical grading, I think it was. It wasn't the whole book was on it, but it had a section on that. And when I read it, it like changed my life, it blew my mind. But I also cheat with that, and I'll tell you how. So the difficulty you get from a 95 to 96, basically if you get a 96, that's like, whoa. Like that's how you should feel. If you get a 97, you should be like, whoa, whoa. If you get a 98, then you should be like, wow, I can't expect a lot of these. If you get a 99, that's like, holy crap. If you get a 100, let's be honest. I'm going to be honest with you right now. Hundreds per semester, I give maybe 2. And that's not in a class, that's for all my classes. So that's not common. I've only ever given 1 on the research paper. And I remember it. It was very good. Very, very good. Many 99s, though. Like at least a few handfuls of 99s I've given on research papers. Lots and lots of 95s, because to me that's a 100. Like that's the traditional teacher's 100. But like I had a discussion one time and I was like, I don't know, I grade these students. One of the teacher was like, I was talking to this other teacher and they said, oh, I felt like I graded my students so hard. I was being so mean to them this last time. And I was like, oh yeah, I hear what you mean. Like I felt like I went too easy on my students last time, you know? I just felt really guilty about that. Like I should have graded them harder. And I was like, what was your average grade? And she said, I mean, I was giving some of them like 90s, like not even hundreds. And I was like, oh, I'm at like 75. She's like, the hell? And I was like, well, I let them revise. And they were like, why do you do that? And I was like, well, they can fix it. It's better. They can do whatever they want. And she was like, oh, okay. So I guess I don't feel like that constraint to feel like, you know, you can't ever improve. Now, I would say that if most people would get a 95 in this room or 96, be like, did it, go me.
So there's really no purpose to revise after 90?
I would say 90, yeah. Usually 95 is my 100. So if you see I've given you something less than a 95, I would say you could revise. Now, I will say that while that sounds unfair and like I'm losing points, I have intentionally put other grade categories in that help make up that difference. It's just in terms of the actual paper grade, I can't allow myself to do that. It's like a deep-seated ideological thing. But I have the connection grades, which are daily, that are essentially like you show up, you get grades. Later in the class, the presentation for the research paper is very similar. This is not a speech class, so I'm not grading you on speech stuff. I'm not listening for every and I'm like, done, roasted. That's not how I'm grading you. I'm like, did the person stand up and speak for 2 minutes? Was it roughly what their research paper was over? Credit. It's very easy to get. So I make other grades in the class easier to get. Additionally, I have things like achievements, because I do have this ideological issue with giving a perfection. But at the same time, I understand that that's unfair to people who want to have high grades, and you're like, hey, I want the high grade. So I give you points in other areas that kind of help make up that difference. So this here, like if you get a 95, feel like you made 100. If you get a 96, 90, if you get 100, that's essentially like, I guess, a normal teacher giving like a 125 to 140, which I don't think happens very often. So that's how good you should feel if you get a 100 for me, or even a 99. 98s and 97, 96s, you should feel like, wow, I'm much better than average of even the people who did well. That's how you should feel. So does anybody have any questions or even criticisms of that ideological? Yeah.
So what if I revise my paper and make it worse? Are you going to still give me the...
No. It's actually set, I'm glad they have this setting in Blackboard, where I have it set where the highest grade you receive on an assignment is what you get. So let's say that for some reason, I have had this happen before, it's very rare, but I told them what to do, how to fix it. And generally speaking, if I give you a 95 or above, I won't tell you how to fix it. The only scenario is like if you get a 99 and I thought you might have could get 100 if you've done just one little thing. And sometimes I'm like, I really want that person to get that 100 so they know how good it was, but like they made a mistake, so I got to make them fix that mistake first. But for the most part, people who revise, like say you have a 90, I tell you what to do to fix it. You do something else, and it becomes an 85 instead of a 90. You still keep the 90. Highest grade stays. Highest grade stays, highest grade plays. Rhymes, so it must be true. I don't even know what that means. But, hey, it didn't fall on the floor. So I understand people might have difference of opinion on this ideological issue that I have with the 95s. But it's also a way for you, when you get that 97, you'll be like, look at me. Like, I did something amazing.
I still feel like I should have gotten it.
I understand. I disagree if I didn't get one. Now, well, I'm not going to ask if you got a 95, but if you got a 95, think in your head you did get a 100. I won't ask you to say you're great, but if you got like a 95, then you got a 100. If it was anything less than a 95 and I didn't explain to you why, anybody? Like if it was like a 94, 93, I didn't explain why you feel, then ask me, because to me 95 is 100 and I'm trying to get everybody at least to that. So I would need to know from somebody that I didn't give you adequate feedback on the 90 something that you got, because anything that's below 95, I've got an idea that there's something that I know that can be changed that could make that better. I just need more, like the difference between like 95 and 100 is generally deeper analysis, deeper thought, greater use of logic, greater detail, higher vocabulary, complex sentences. It's a lot of different like chemical materials that have to go in to create a superior product. Like there's not really an exact answer for past 95. I think I have, and here's the problem with the sample papers too. I don't provide any of the 100 sample papers because generally speaking, they're not readable by most students. They're not something that most students could pick up and read and go, I understand this. Like they're extremely intelligently written in such a way where I feel like it takes a college professor in most instances to even read that essay to understand it. I would say that the obesity paper that I gave y'all was an example of where somebody, I don't know, even she could have done better. I feel like those ideas weren't specific enough, but it was accessible to the normal reader, so that's why I included it as a sample paper. Did anybody read the voter apathy paper? It's pretty damn well written, wasn't it? I mean, it's not like a normal person would write. And who writes about voter apathy? That's another thing. It's like, who wants to sit down and write an essay about why aren't people voting? Like, it's just not a normal thing people even want to tackle. In fact, I think he's only the fourth person ever had to do that. Or he was the first person at the time. He's only one of 4 people who's ever done that topic. And I assume that people who are drawn to a topic like that are people who have their minds on things outside of themselves, on the greater society, thinking from other people's perspective, all kinds of just different elements that go into creating pure and unadulterated excellence. Yes?
I have a question, but not related to the essays.
Okay.
With the labs, are we able to do them more than once?
You can, although I want to not have this on the recording because I don't want people to see on the recording what Magnus Barak is doing on the quizzes. I forgot to unpause recording. We had a question about some of the videos on the labs don't work, so we're going to get those fixed. I'd asked everybody to email me if they notice the lab's missing a video or the video's not working anymore, so I can get that fixed. Additionally, I had a student who reminded me that I need to show how to do page numbering, so I'm going to pull up an essay and just kind of show y'all how that works. Just real quick. So let me get a assign essay 2 cause effect. That is the script. That's not anything. What now?
Are we supposed to page number?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to have, and it's not something I harp on heavily, but let me see. Let's take this one. That's really slow scrolling. You can see the kinds of response. This is literally the feedback I gave to this student who got a 99. I said, have you been planted in my class? Are you a spy? This is absolutely positively excellent. The only thing I can even think to criticize that you say a significant improvement in the process of voter education is needed, but you merely say that to do so would be problematic rather than give a specific solution. Or rather, you give solutions but immediately rebut your own solutions, so you deflate your own argument there. So see, I found something very specific because I was like, how do I justify not giving 100? Because I could feel it wasn't 100, but I didn't know why. And then I was like, really thought about it and went, oh, okay, this is the issue. Lack of faith in the system, solutions, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, that's irrelevant because I'm just trying to copy the essay, right? So, sorry, I get excited about the really, really good essays. Let's see. So close this, done with this. Here's what you do. Let's say we have the essay ready, right? We're ready to go. I want to turn this in. But I need page numbers. Crap, how do humans do this? Give me a second. Because all I know is Alt-VH, and it goes straight to what I need. I got to figure out how to do that the normal way. How do you go to header footers? Insert. Header. Footer, not footer, page number, top of page. I want it on the right. There we go. Okay, I believe what you need to do.
And then you have to remove the first page number. Because you said you don't want the first page number.
Right, and this is where it gets difficult. So you have to be clicked on the right thing, and you have to go back and change it if you get it wrong. So I do design, because it's talking about header footer tools now. Design, and I do different first page. Now, because I can see that it's still on page 3, that means I know it went through properly. It's going to be on page 2, but it's not going to be on page 1. Now, if I do that wrong, which means that I start trying to mess with the page number stuff, but I have my cursor on the first page when I'm doing it, and I click Design, Different First Page, sometimes, not every time, what'll happen is, if I've never gone to another page and clicked it, what'll happen is the first page one will be there, but the other ones won't. And you'll be like, ah, crap, what happened? So in that case, what you need to do is just Control-Z, so undo it, and then click in the other place and do the same thing. So the page after the first one, hit Design, Different First Page, and then it should fix the issue if it didn't work right the first time. But that's how you do it.
So to get rid of the first one, you have to click on the second.
That's how I usually do it and how I make it work. You have to be clicked on the second, then click Different First Page, and the first page numbering will then go away. But if this makes it any easier for you guys, I actually don't mind if it's on the first page. But I guess I would be impressed if you managed to find a way to get it off the first page. I think most people like to impress. Unless you're the kind of person who you get to the end of the word count and then you wake up because you just were in a dream while you typed the whole thing. And you're like, what happened? Am I hit the word count? I did submit. And like, you don't even look at it. You don't read it. Did I tell you what happened on one of the papers that I had? That's so non-specific. What happened was I had one of the papers that I was grading. Is this actually currently recording? Yes, it is. So it was a pretty well written, for the most part, narrative essay about the death of a loved one or a friend or something. And when I got to the end of the paper, and they didn't, I guess, read through what was on the viewer to make sure that it was okay. And it was a PDF. And I think it was a PDF, my assumption. And I assumed it was a PDF made from something in OpenOffice, because for some reason in OpenOffice, sometimes if you export to PDF or Word document, it cuts off like the last 3 lines of your paper, and I've yet to figure out why. So watch out, this could be you. But the very last words of the paper stopped mid-sentence, because I guess you posted it, thought it looked okay, didn't read through it to make sure, and autocorrect or something accidentally changed one of their words to booby. And like it ended with booby was. Like that was the end of the paper. And I just started laughing. And it was a paper that was actually fairly well written up to that point about like the death of a loved one, but I was just like, it's one of those situations where, because it just stops in the middle, I don't know where it ends, and like there was that weirdly weird big mistake at the end that was like threw everything off. I had to like count off quite a bit more than I normally would for it because it was weird. Kind of like that time where a student accidentally used the F word in a research paper. I'm pretty sure they were trying to. It was a paper about fracking, so my assumption is accidental misuse of word or autocorrect or something. So it was the F word instead of fracking. And I was like, it really doesn't make that huge of a difference in terms of the percentage of words you misspelled. It's just this one was a really big deal. If I was to have anybody read this, they'd go, oh, my word. You gave that how much? That's too high. That's atrocious. That's smut. So I would have to, I counted off a lot for that. I said I gave it like, I think a 69 because I was like, I can't even give it a passing grade. So until you take that out and find what's supposed to be there, then it'll, and I told them too, I said, this is probably going to be a 95 just once you take out this one thing. So I believe that was the smallest change that ever made that much of a difference in points, was like literally remove this word, switch it with something else, and you'll have a 95 instead of a 69. So that was a weird day. So yeah, it's very important that you read over the thing at the end. But like if you want to impress me, definitely read over. Another way to impress me, insert page numbers. Another way to impress me, different first page. I think I'll go ahead and move on because it's 10:15. Look at this. Questions. So I mean, if you have any more questions at the end, you can ask me as well. I almost like locked my computer. I don't know what I'm thinking. But let's talk about exemplification, classification, division, definition, different aspects, and why all of them at once. Well, the book has them listed as different types of essays. So I could have you write a different essay for each one, but I thought, good heavens, that's a lot of writing. But I do think that each one of these is an aspect of well-written essays, so that's kind of how I prefer to frame them in discussion. I will go into these in more detail on different slides, but basically exemplification is just to exemplify, which means make example of. And when we talk about exemplification, it's just you providing examples, which every good paper should do. Classification, division, it can be a style of essay, but to me, mostly it's used for creating categories, classification, and division, which is breaking things into smaller categories. Classifying, you're taking things that aren't in categories and putting them into it. So I imagine in many cases you'll be writing, say, the second cause-effect essay, about what's the major cause of binge drinking among college students or school shootings, and you're like, man, I want to fit as many of the causes, the contributory causes, under one big umbrella cause as I can, so that way I have the most options for my solutions. I can have more solutions that have more effects because it covers more stuff. And so what you'll need to do is think of how do I categorize these all into one big cause category. So that's a way you would use classification. And in terms of like the third essay, division is something you would use because you'd say, all right, how do I, well, actually, that's even more of a classification scenario. I have better examples of division later. But on the essay 3 topic, to keep it from turning into that narrative apocalypse style, you need to categorize the different effects into categories. Like here, this would happen to society, this would happen to society, this would, and then break down little examples of each type of category that would happen. Like this would affect the economy or health or security or something like that. Now definition is a whole paper that's a definition. You'll probably do that in something like psychology class or biology at some point, where you have to do a quick write-up on like how do you define the amygdala or something. So you have to write an essay about what the amygdala is, clarify what that means, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have you write a definition essay, I just have you utilize definition within papers. Anytime something needs to be defined, you do. So rather than have you write all of these different papers, I just let you use aspects of, or these as aspects of good papers. So talking about examples, it's important to provide examples, basically. Any type of writing that you do, I think it's good to have an example of what you're talking about. Even the narrative, if you think about it. The whole paper was made up of examples of, you're exemplifying what it is that was your first experience. Now, it's one big, long example. But at the end of the paper, the most important example you're providing is the example that shows how you've changed from that experience. And so a lot of people tend to provide that one example. It didn't work out for them. So examples are used to explain and clarify or to add interest, or to persuade. For me, they always have to explain and clarify is the most important thing, but they can also add interest and persuade. And as you get to things like any paper we have a thesis, for the most part, your examples should be helping to persuade. How many papers have a thesis?
All of them.
All of them. So like any paper is going to have some example that helps persuade. That one that shows how you change from the experience, that's going to be your example to persuade. And if you're lucky, it also adds interest. Like I feel the sample paper, the narrative essay did, where he said, I've gone to like roller skating rinks, and I was like, I'm trying to think of like this guy who's got vision problems skating in a roller skating rink, what that would be like for the first time. So I get to kind of imagine that, and so it's an interesting idea. And sometimes just the example itself would be interesting. Now, if I was to explain, or somebody explains that they saw someone jumping hurdles and they were the worst hurdle jumper ever, right? Like you make that claim. It's essentially like a thesis almost. Like he is the worst hurdle jumper ever. And you're like, okay, give me an example. Like what did he do? Imagine the guy's like, okay, give me an example. What do you do? Like how was he the worst hurdle jumper ever? And you say, man, he was just so bad. I'm like, right. Like what? Like tell me like what he did. Oh, he was just like, the jumping of the hurdles. He was just the worst. Okay, but like, tell me one thing he actually did or didn't do that made you say that he's the worst hurdle jumper ever. Well, like when he was supposed to be like, whoa, he was more like, whoa. And you're just like, this is stupid. This is not helping me at all. So somebody who's adequately explaining is going to need some sort of examples of exactly what a hurdle jumper did to show that they were the worst hurdle jumper ever. This guy. Nope. Oh, no. Forget it. Just run through them. Straight through them. You got this. Be first. Be first. Oh, no. Oh, dear. Oh, crap. Stay in your... No, different lane. New lane. Woo! He's not last. Woo! That's pretty bad. So, I mean, I never, from the explanation that I gave, like, we just like, whoa, like, I never got that from that explanation, right? Nobody did, because you need the example to explain and clarify. You need to say, he was the worst hurdle jumper, as we could all see. He never cleared a single hurdle. But then he just quit trying, just ran straight through them. But then after a few minutes, after a few hurdles, he just, like, got tripped up and fell over, and you think, well, at least he'll stay in his lane and finish out. But no, he just cuts some other guy off and starts running in his lane. So it's like, clearly he was the worst hurdle jumper ever, because these are different examples of what made him the worst hurdle jumper, so we have to have those in order to explain and clarify to the person listening. It's also important to always try to provide ample example, and it helps because it rhymes to remember that. But you just need enough examples to help prove the point that you're making. Any example, if you think maybe I should provide one, because you can always take it out later if it's too much. I'll tell you, don't have this, remove this. And that's much easier than adding one where you hadn't thought of one before. They can also add interest, so examples could add interest in a particular matter. Like if I tell you that mirrors can be used to focus light rays to create intense heat. Is that exciting? Mirrors focus light rays, intense heat. Most of you are like, ooh, like mirrors, intense. But if I use an example, like if I say, if you take 2 square meters of sunshine and you focus them, you can get to 35, oh, what the heck did I just do? I was trying to move the cursor. You can get to 3,500 degrees heat, that's Celsius. That's hot enough to melt steel or even rock. And that's just from the amount of sunlight that unfocused gives a few people a tan on the beach. You have 3 people laying next to each other, they'll probably be collecting 2 meters of sunshine just over their bodies. But if you focus that into one place, it can get to 3,500 degrees and melt rock. That's a little bit better example, but even some people, they're like, that involves numbers, and I don't like numbers, they make me uncomfortable. So you need to see an example to know if you're interested in this. I already know exactly your reactions.
Yes. I drink some water.
So if my hand's here, it's okay, but if it went there, what would happen?
Not as a focus. Here it's okay, but...
And even a mirror this big, would it be powerful enough to kind of set light to something?
Yes.
Can I try it?
Go ahead.
Okay, show me the focus. I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay. Oh, my life. Can we do that again? That's astonishing. I've never seen anything set light to wood that quickly. How hot is it now? What temperature does it get to?
At that focal point, we can reach a temperature higher than 3,500 degrees C, and there is currently no known materials that could resist this.
There is nothing on Earth that can withstand the temperature right in the middle there.
Nothing.
And I'm pointing at it.
Exactly.
Just 2 square meters of sunshine can melt steel pretty easily. I'd love to try and weld some stuff with sunshine. It'd be really nice. If you had 3 people sunbathing, they would be collecting that amount of sunshine. And look what it does. Despite having traveled 93 million miles, the energy of the sun can even melt rock. Look at that! See, to me, that's far more amazing than melting steel. Like, I see steel melt every other day, but I've never seen anything like that.
What do you call melted rock? Yeah, lava, right? You can make lava, right? Now, what was the most impressive example you did? It was the wood, right? Well, that's really less impressive if you think about it, but you're just like, fire. The other thing is just like, smoke. I've seen smoke. I know what smoke is. You know, like I didn't see lava, so it's not as interesting. But mathematically, that was really interesting. Now, you can also use examples to persuade. Now, I'm not talking about a video of somebody who's persuading somebody, but if I make a claim, then I want to persuade somebody to be on board with that claim, and I can provide examples that would do that. So, for example, if I say, I have the best blender on the market, you're like, big whoop. Everybody says that. If you say, well, I can blend anything. Well, big whoop. Everybody says that. Well, we can blend anything. Our blender's the best. But if you said, but if you wanted to, I mean, our blender could not just blend like fruits, vegetables. I mean, we could blend anything you want, like inanimate objects, like an iPhone.
Will it blend? That is the question. I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button.
It's okay. I think it's an iPhone 3, so it's barely a phone. Then.
I smoke. Don't breathe this.
See? Blends an iPhone. However, so I mean, I know that my blender can blend an iPhone. However, you need to provide enough examples. For example, you probably tried to show if you had the loss of a loved one that the individual in question meant a lot to you. But if you just showed one example of that, you probably didn't convince the reader. Your loved one may have helped you with an art project one time, but that's not enough. You can't say, oh, my dad was amazing. He helped me with that art project that one time. That doesn't tell me like your dad was fantastic. You know, I need to know more. Nor can you just say, well, he didn't just help me with art. He helped me with math and science too, also history. But it's still, you're just saying that he helped you with schoolwork. I mean, that's not, he's got to be more to your dad than that. So you need to provide enough examples and a fair range of examples, as it says here. so that we know it covers a lot of different areas. So you can't just even prove that, like, if somebody says, well, your blender can blend up an iPhone, big whoop, and you're like, but we can also do iPod Nanos, iPads, regular iPods. And you're just like, okay, so you're just good at blending up Apple products? And you're like, no, these are just examples of things. Well, I need a fair range of examples, things from all different kinds of, perspectives. So maybe things like light bulbs, golf balls, and a rake.
I'm going to demonstrate that our blenders are not your average blenders.
Do I know what this stuff is now?
Sand.
It's sand. Melted sand is glass.
High quality,
Turned it into sand.
ultimate distance titanium balls.
Now I realize what takes these so long is they're made to bounce. So that's what they do, they bounce. It turns up the heat on it. No, I mean like turn up the power. That would be cool though.
No, I need one of these.
Like a warm smoothie. Oh, can you imagine like a pineapple smoothie? Like it tastes like pineapple upside down cake, but it's warm, so it's like you're drinking a warm pineapple.
I have an Ames, no clog, 30 inch.
Okay, so it's this long.
To put into a blend kit.
It's like, right now it's like that long, it's like that long, right? Boom. 10 seconds. Goodbye, Ray. So, you may think, but that's not really persuasive. I mean, what is it persuading? When they release these, here's what happens. One day, like, the owner of the company, he walks into, like, the, I guess, back room or whatever, and they're doing the tests on this stuff, and I'm sure that they test it with fruits and crap all the time, but they just started messing around. And they saw that Exemp, the guy who's in these videos, and also, like, some other, like, lab people were blending up just random things. And he said, this is actually pretty funny. How about I think it's like, they went and got like a camera for like $100 or something, like a webcam, and started like videoing them and putting them on YouTube, and ended up having like 220,000 subscribers over time. And they put out like more than I think 100 and something videos. And after they put out the videos of this stuff, even though they're pretty expensive blenders, like they're really expensive, their sales rose 700%. So this is actually the truest example of an example that persuades. They say, we have the best blender on the market. Watch me blend a rake. Okay, all right, I want one. It's just one of those things where you see an example of how good it is, and that's persuasive. Very persuasive example. Like, we're going to show you. So classification division. It's a little bit different category of essay writing and stuff that makes essays good. So basically these are direct opposites. When you're classifying things, you're putting them into categories. When you're dividing, you're breaking them into smaller categories. So we might think to ourselves, all the examples of how great my dad was involved in helping me with schoolwork. I should just classify those into a schoolwork category within the paragraph, but then provide some more examples. So you might come up with, well, he also supported me in deciding to quit football in order to do theater. This is not a Texas father. Attending all my plays, even though I saw him fall asleep. He wanted me close by after college, but when I told him I got a great job in New York, he supported my decision, and he and Mom flew in every time to see me, so we could be together a little bit longer. So it's like, it's okay if you want to do theater instead of football. It's okay if you want to work in New York and not at home. So this is not an actual Texas parent, but it's still a pretty good example of how these are different categories of things that show the wide range of good nature that my father had besides just he helped me with schoolwork. So I'm trying to find different areas in which he also supported me to show how supportive he was. Now you want to limit your number of categories. You don't want to try to go with too many categories. Like on the essay 3, you may not want to do the 18 categories of effects that could happen if we, lose gasoline. You may want to think about how could I put those into bigger, broader categories so I'm not having to do quite so many. Like if you try to do an essay on the 45 categories of lying, it'd be like way too hard. That's like a book. In fact, there is a book called The 48 Laws of Power, which talks about how to, in business and in life, get what you want out of situations and always maintain the upper hand. And the guy realized it's going to take me like 5, 6, 7 pages per category of power, or like law of power, so I need to have like a whole book length, and it's like that big, and it's a good idea to have that for something of that length. But you don't want to have 45 in one essay. It's just going to be a list. You have 3 pages, like I can just list those. I think I'm going to skip the star size comparison for now. I'll go back to it if I have time. But this is a video that classifies by the size of astronomical bodies. I think I'll have time to go back to it, but I just want to be sure. Now, division is anytime you're breaking things into categories. So let's say that we want to talk about like an essay about all the ways my dad's helped me with schoolwork. So we need to divide that into different categories. Like, okay, you also divided help me with math, science, art, history. Those are different categories within schoolwork that I can say he helped me with. Skip that one too, because I don't even like it. So the tricky thing is figuring out what categories are valid and what divisions are valid, and that's where most people mess up. Is like you'll think that a category is valid next to another one, but there's something that causes it not to work based on the logic of how you've broken down categories. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So you want to make sure all your categories derive from the same principle. So if we're saying that he helped me with schoolwork, and that's our big category, and you say he helped me with school subjects like math, science, English, and lunch, what's the problem there? Lunch. It's not a schoolwork category. So you have to have all these derived from the same principle. All the categories have to be essentially equal in that way. You also have to have them be at the same level, even if they do work, they have to be at the same level in terms of them not being subcategories of something else. So what's the problem here? Subjects like math, science, biology, and English. Science and biology, one of those has got to go. Either we get rid of science, make it biology, we get rid of biology, make it science. And that might help, especially if we were thinking maybe I'll add in chemistry. Well, then we could just change it to science, and that covers biology and chemistry. So you want to make sure that they're all at the same level, not have a subcategory of one that's next to a category. And you should treat all categories that are significant and relevant to your discussion. So if there's a category that's inconvenient for you, for example, if you're doing the solutions on a paper, or let's say that you're doing the school shooting category, and you're saying here's the major cause, and you come up with a cause that somewhat ignores one of the big factors that people have talked about causes this thing, then that's going to be unfortunate. You don't want to do that. You should never ignore an unsightly negative because you don't know how to deal with it. That happens a lot in politics. If you'll pay attention, a lot of people will say, like, this is the biggest problem I have with the abortion argument is like, well, I don't want there to be abortion. It's against like what I think is right as a Christian. It's like, okay, so the baby's gonna be born and the parent can't take care of it. So we need to put we need to have Medicare, right? Oh no. Medicare takes taxes. I don't believe in that. So we want the baby to be born, but then fend for itself as an infant. Yes. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. Additionally, the idea that we should, the liberal idea that we should, have freedoms in all these different areas, but not the freedom to have a gun. Like, I don't know, like the idea that you can't have I don't know, to me, like that's another freedom. Like, I don't understand why that freedom's not okay, but other freedoms are. Like the freedom to marry who I want, and all those other freedoms, but the freedom to defend my family. No, you can't do that. Like, that's not okay. That's guaranteed by the Constitution, but no, it's not okay. I just kind of, I don't know. I feel like there are times when people ignore various arguments against a political idea because it's political, and that mostly happens with political ideas. It'll also happen with other ideas as well, but usually that's just a result of carelessness. So just be careful of those kind of things. Now, definition, defining something. All definitions, according to the book, will tend to reveal this three-part structure. You'll have a term that needs to be defined, some general class to which it belongs, and then it will have the qualities that differentiate it from the other terms in the same class. So for example, and this is all in the book, but let's say I have narrative as a writing style that presents events in a chronological sequence. Okay, so the term that's being defined is narrative. Then I'm saying, what class does it belong? Well, narrative, I'm basically talking about it's a writing style. So there are other types of writing styles like cause and effect, comparison and contrast, argumentative. Now what differentiates it from those others? Well, it presents events in a chronological sequence. Cause effect may do that, but if it does it too much, what ends up happening is it turns into a narrative, because that's a characteristic of narrative. That's why I tell you all to make sure that you think of things in terms of categories for the likely effects of a severe protracted shortage essay topic. And think of it in terms of like different categories of effects. Otherwise, it ends up turning into just this narrative of the apocalypse, and you don't want that to happen. Let's see. And I'm sure you'll do some sort of definition essay at some point in your, it usually happens in some sort of science class or science-based class, so that you'll probably end up defining some psychological term or sociological term, and that'll be considered an essay. But often, other teachers will talk about essays not in terms of having a thesis, but just like, okay, it's a definition essay, so you just need to define the thing. And essentially, that kind of paper, your thesis is, this is defined as this, here's why. So it's not as complicated. One thing to watch out for when you're defining is to watch out for slang. Again, I'll go back to that old example I had. Death is when a person finally kicks the bucket. Any language that's inaccurate for the sake of trying to help like a normal person understand, I think is when people use slang. So try to avoid that at all costs when you're defining. Let's get that. I do want to show you, like, has anybody heard of the mimic octopus? One. I'm going to show you real quick. This is kind of I try to come up with something that not a lot of people know what it is. So the mimic octopus, not a lot of people have heard of. And there's this doctor, basically, he defines what it is. He says it's a mimic octopus, then gives the class to which it belongs, which is an octopus, and then what differentiates it from other octopi. And kind of goes over that over the course of this video and trying to define it because it's kind of new. So he's having to give everything that he does know about it in order to add to this definition.
No, until it was spotted, first by fishermen off the coast of Indonesia in the 1990s. It looked like an octopus, but it could morph its shape in an instant to appear as seemingly any animal around it. At first, no one had any idea what it was.
The first time I saw it, I just was blown away. You couldn't get a more spectacular animal. It really is the pinnacle of wizardry.
Biologist Mark Norman was the first scientist to study this seemingly shapeless creature. He named it the mimic octopus.
The mimic octopus makes itself look like a living, moving animal. So it pulls all its arms around behind its body and swims along like a poisonous flatfish called a banded sole. In other cases, if it's getting attacked, it puts 6 arms down a hole and raises the other 2 arms to look like a poisonous sea snake that has bands along its body. That's not enough. It'll swim along looking like a poisonous lionfish with these banded arms looking like the banded spines that come off these very deadly fish.
So far, 15 separate species are known to be in the mimic octopus act, and Norman is not always sure exactly what the mimic is doing. He observed this mimic scuttling along the sea bottom, looking something like a furry turkey with human legs.
Sometimes it's hard when you watch a mimic octopus doing what it does to interpret what's going on. It's a bit like looking at ink spots in a psychiatrist's office going, I don't know what it is. It could be a piano, it could be a fridge. So you get 3 or 4 divers together and you'll argue all night trying to work out what we think it was mimicking.
Where did nature's greatest actor come from?
By the way, I know this video so well that it ends a fraction of a second from now.
The unknown.
You just say restart. So you can see that he's defining it's a mimic octopus, and he says it's an octopus, yes. but it makes itself look like other animals that are in the ocean. That's what it decides that it wants to do, I guess, as a defense mechanism, maybe, because what do you know about the furry turkey? I've never seen one of those in the ocean floor, neither have they. I like to think that it's an alien race that existed before we did. That's just my personal feeling. It's just so fun to think that. Like the octopi have been around for a long time, and they just saw these things, and they live in the ocean. They're like, hey guys, look, these things live down here. And we're like, nah, they don't. Like, no, we've seen them. Nah, you're wrong. And then like one day they'll rise up and like take us all down. Anybody seen The Abyss? The movie? Aliens from the ocean fight us. They've been in the ocean the whole time. No, I think that's how it was. I do have time for the star video. So this video has classified astronomical bodies by their size and shown a visual representation of that. I think this is the one with the annoying music. Yes, it sounds like it's some sort of spooky horror thing. I'm just going to mute this. So it actually shows them by size to provide example while also classifying these by their size. And it illuminates things that I had not considered before. Like, that's how big the moon is compared to Mercury. And considering Mercury is a planet, I always thought that was really neat. And that Mars is not all that much bigger than the moon. And then you have Venus, which is dadgum near in size to Earth. And you can see the moon's about the right size for Earth, so that makes sense. Neptune, which is about what I thought, Saturn, and then Jupiter, which doesn't look that much bigger, but you can see that Earth fits into the storm on Jupiter. And then how much bigger is the Sun? You're like, it's not that much bigger than the Earth, but then you realize it's Neptune, not the Earth. And then you're like, you think to the Sun, and you're like, but that's all I was thinking about, because that's what people did for, what, centuries? But there's so many much bigger stars in the Sun based on like the calculations they've made. So, can we even, yeah, there's the Sun, but now the Sun's about to get so small we can't see it anymore. Yeah, it's going. That's not the Sun anymore. So there's a Pistol Star, which is a blue hypergiant, and Taurus A. I think you can visit all of these in the game Elite Dangerous. Have you ever played that? Musefi? No? It's a game where you fly around the galaxy. VY Canis Majoris is the largest known star that we know of, which there could be more, but all we can see of other galaxies is the fact that it's a galaxy art there. We can't make out individual stars, I don't think. So there's the size of Earth. And let me skip ahead here. It says, so this star has a diameter of about 2.8 billion kilometers. And it says, how can you imagine this size? And I don't like this because they divide it into too many categories. Basically, they break down the math to show if you had a plane going 900 kilometers an hour along the surface of this star, it'd take 1,100 years to go around it. To me, that doesn't make it sound bigger. That makes it sound smaller. Like, I'm like, oh, a plane could do this in only 1,100 years? No big deal. To me, it makes more sense to talk about our solar system is 4.6 billion kilometers across. So you could fit only 2 of these stars from one side of Pluto's orbit to the other side. And that would eat our entire solar system. That's pretty freaking massive. And I believe that would basically make it the, I don't want to talk about the math. I get too excited about math. Woo! Ninja. Use your sleep. Use the sleep. There you go. So y'all have a good one. We'll talk about MLA next time. So I'd like you all, if you've already got it, to bring this book with you. We're going to be talking about it a lot on Monday. Okay? It's going to be like the whole basis of our discussion. So bring the tab writer's reference on Monday.
You mean Tuesday?
What now?
You mean Tuesday?
Yes, Tuesday. I'm sorry. Tuesday.